Hello and welcome to Full Time. I'm your host, Jillian Sakovits. This week, we saw one of the greatest U.S. women's national team players of all time hang up their cleats. On Thursday, World Cup winner Crystal Dunn announcing her retirement from the game at age 33. Dunn, who featured as a forward and attacking midfielder and a left back, made 160 appearances for the U.S. women's national team. Her 12-year career primarily spent in the NWSL, with a couple of brief stints in Europe, and most recently, a year with Paris Saint-Germain. So what will Dunn's legacy be? How will she be remembered? What was her best position? And is she the greatest NWSL player of all time? And now, how does Emma Hayes replace her? On today's episode, we're going to be getting into all that and so much more from NWSL Media Day out in Los Angeles, the end of the U.S. Women's National Team January training camp, including their 5-0 win over Chile on Tuesday night. That's right. So that means that they outscored their opponents over those two friendlies between Chile and Paraguay 11-0. Plus, we'll close out with a check-in on the FIFA Women's Champions Cup semifinals that went down in London on Wednesday. And now live from Los Angeles, California, from NWSL Media Day, what a trio we have for you. First up, it's Melanie Anzidei. Hello, Melanie.
Hello. Happy to be here.
And back in the USA, it's Tamerra Griffin. Hello, Tamerra.
Hi. Please forgive me. I'm fighting for my life with a little bit of a cold, so I have my emotional support tea with me, but I'm ready to spill a little bit of tea with you guys.
But I'm assuming going to Europe and Africa was well worth it.
I would do it 10 times over. For this immune system, we'll live. It was worth it.
And joining us for her second ever appearance on the Full Time Pod, we've got writer at Just Women's Sports and the host of the Late Sub podcast, Claire Watkins. Hello, Claire. Welcome back.
Thank you. Excited to talk about lots of news today.
And the big news this Thursday being that World Cup champion, Olympic gold medalist, 2015 NWSL MVP. I didn't see this one coming, and I'm feeling very emotional about it. Crystal Dunn announcing her retirement at 33 years of age. Her statement on social media saying, "This decision has not come easily, but I am at peace and deeply fulfilled with all that I have accomplished. I've achieved nearly everything I dreamed of in this sport, and I gave all I had to give. I'm ready to embrace the life that awaits me on the other side. I look forward to spending more time with my family and being a more present mom." Tamerra, what was your reaction when you saw the news Thursday morning?
I mean, it was at the top of my Instagram feed. And when I tell you, Jill, just last night, over tacos with some of the media folks here after NWSL Media Day, day one, I literally said that I was still lighting a candle for Crystal Dunn to make her way back into the U.S. Women's National Team and maybe have a chance to go to Brazil for the 2027 Olympics. This time last year, she was still getting called up by Emma Hayes into national team camp. So it didn't feel super far-fetched to me. Obviously, the time that she spent with PSG did not do her many favors. She wasn't getting a lot of minutes, which obviously doesn't bode well, given where Emma Hayes is with her national team selection and how closely she's been monitoring players' development. But it's gutting. She is a player who is so singular, both in terms of her personality, both in terms of, the word that we always associate with Crystal Dunn in terms of her contributions as a player on the pitch is her versatility. And even that versatility has a lot of baggage with it, right? She didn't always want to play into the positions that she was being assigned, and yet she still excelled. And to have that be such a major part of her story as one of very few Black female soccer players, especially at the time, she has been such a trailblazer in that regard in so many ways. Her announcement, I think, has a lot of layers for it. I think it's pretty emotional, honestly, for me personally, and I think a lot of other Black folks who hold this game so dear and have followed her journey so closely. This also, as retirement announcements tend to be, I think offers us an opportunity to reflect. And in the case of Crystal especially, I think, give flowers that maybe were not given to the degree that they should have been at the time that she was winning golden boots and NWSL championships and MVP awards back in the day. So kind of still processing, but I'm embracing the opportunity to reflect on the incredible career that she's had.
one of the talk about, again, still processing the feelings of all of this. Another kind of marker of the passage of time as well, where I was thinking to myself this morning, like, if you were a fan who came into women's soccer as far back as 2019, you still maybe didn't understand how good Crystal Dunn was. And then if you are a fan that came in 2023 or 2024, how could you possibly know how good Crystal Dunn was? The longevity of excellence that she had in the NWSL from, playing for Washington. People were talking about just the incredible run she went on in 2015 after being left off of that World Cup roster as a forward, moving into the midfield during just that incredible dominance for North Carolina, 2017, 18, 2019. She was unstoppable in that system there. Moving to Portland, winning a championship with Portland, just it's remarkable to me to think, and this is just how careers end, and that is a truth of sports, which is that anytime you do reach that point, you go, man, time has passed. And I hope that women's soccer fans, women's sports fans go back and find those old broadcasts of what she was doing when she first entered the league and throughout what she did in the NWSL, because I was saying this, I think she is the greatest NWSL player of all time, in addition to being not only one of the best U.S. women's national team players of all time with her versatility, but literally maybe their best left back of all time in her, not preferred positions. So there's not enough words. There's literally not enough words to encapsulate what Crystal Dunn's career has meant to the sport.
Yeah, for me, one of the things that really comes to mind is especially the last few years of her career, how kind of this ending has kind of come about. I also was very shocked to see this when we opened our phones in the morning. I wasn't ready for this. I wasn't ready to see Crystal Dunn be done with with soccer, But I immediately went back to being, I believe it was in San Diego. She was still in the women's national team camp with Emma Hayes, and just asking her about, the decision to, leave Gotham, go to PSG, that transition. And I could see it in her face how tough of a move that was for her, being so far away from her family, being away from her kids, her husband. And I could see in that moment, how much that weighed on her. So I understand from the human perspective why decision came now, especially. Again, I'm sad as, the athlete. She is someone who, I'm from New Jersey. She's from Long Island. Having that hometown, return to Gotham, that was such a big moment. And I kind of wish there was more to that. I feel like there was still more left to give and more. I think we'll, obviously, as we go and continue talking about this in the weeks and months to come, of course, I can't wait to see, the celebration that I'm sure we'll have for Crystal Dunn on the national team level. There's still so much more to talk about, the impact that she's brought to the game and the influence on this next generation. So again, that was kind of my initial reaction to, I still wishing for more, but I'm sure hoping to see her maybe around the game, as we see with all these greats kind of sticking around.
New York's own Crystal Dunn. Tamerra, before we say goodbye, I want to talk about Dunn's leadership style and how it was different and unique. And I love, Claire, what you said about, for you, her being the best NWSL player of all time. So Tamerra, one, what do you think? And then two, the way that she led this U.S. team.
I love a bold declaration, Claire, so co-sign. I think what makes Crystal such an exceptional player is how much she achieved from so many different positions, including, like I said, at times where she might not have even wanted to play in the positions that she was being asked to in the roles that she was being asked to serve. But I also think that part of her legacy is also that leadership component. I actually asked Trinity Rodman about that today at Media Day, and she acknowledged that sort of the irony that as close as Crystal was to players like Megan Rapinoe and Becky Sauerbrunn, who each had their own distinct leadership styles, she occupied sort of a third space in which she really valued having these deep personal connections with both younger players that she was able to relate to, because Crystal Dunn has a timelessness sort of aura that I think, because she's, such a great dancer and so comfortable in her skin, being able to express herself in all of these ways that I think put people around her at ease. It's something that I think really appeals to younger people. But of course, having the experience that she has and having grown up with some of the older players, she was able to sort of embody this intergenerational bridge that I think is so crucial on a national team, especially heading into a major tournament. Trinity talked about how much fun it was to play at the Olympics with her, I think for that reason. But Crystal has also talked about sort of why she had to lead in the way that she did. I think when we go back to 2020 and the reckoning that we had as a country on race and how she had to sort of be strategic in the ways that she expressed how she was feeling about everything that was going on in the country, especially as, like I said, one of the few Black players with the U.S. women's national team, and what it would have meant for her to kneel during the anthem. How the reaction to that was always going to be different than someone like Megan Rapinoe doing that. So just those conversations about allyship, I think, are really important to remember when we think about Crystal Dunn's legacy. But she still was leading. She led by example. She led, of course, by her work rate on the pitch. And Trinity Rodman said that we probably will never see another player like Crystal Dunn at the club or country level. And let that be true, you know? She is such a singular player. She's such a singular person. And having profiled her right before the 2023 World Cup and having extensive conversations with her at a time where things were challenging, especially at that positional level. I remember her talking about how she really embraces the opportunity to reinvent herself as a person and as a player. And so when I think about the way that she crafted her retirement announcement on Instagram, we can also read that as yet another way that she's going to be reinventing herself for this next chapter, which is beautiful. And that's something that Sophia Wilson spoke about today when we asked her about Crystal Dunn, because the two of them became very close when they were playing on the Thorns together. So I think that there are just so many layers to Crystal as a jinx, as a player and a person, as a player and a person. And like I said earlier, I think that this announcement, as bittersweet as it is, also offers us an opportunity to really honor all of the layers that she brought to the game and all the ways that she's changed it for the better.
And I really look forward to, from Dunn in her retirement now, of peeling those layers back that Tamerra, not that she felt she couldn't, but that she really couldn't put forward in her time with the politics and all with the national team. I really look forward to that freeing of Crystal Dunn, because while she's been a trailblazer and led so many, you always get the sense that she's got some more to say and she's got some more to do. And on a lighter note, when I think about what makes me happy about Crystal Dunn, it's the joy that she brought when she was playing. And you mentioned the dancing. Like, if I think of 2019, I think of Dunn dancing and celebrating. And in a way, it feels poetic that we, saw Trinity come back this weekend and, dance alongside Emma Hayes. Shout out to the Sexy Dexy. So, yeah, just a lot of memories like flowing in at the moment. Now, as we look ahead to life without Crystal Dunn, Claire, how do you replace a player like Dunn for the women's national team that is so young, so budding, so exciting? But with that, there comes inexperience. So how does Emma Hayes replace Dunn as she looks to the World Cup?
I think actually the highest compliment one can pay to Crystal Dunn is I feel like they've spent the better part of a year trying to figure that out. We even saw, obviously, in like 2023, 2024, there was always some experimentation with that role, sometimes even to spring Dunn into the midfield possibly and figuring out different roles for her. And the answer for years and years and years is there is no American left back better than Crystal Dunn. But I think we are seeing some rotations. I think the nice thing is that Emily Fox, who has become an established starter on the team, can play on both sides, which we know. So I think what they're doing is they're auditioning both left backs and right backs and figuring out what that best combination is. They would like Emily Fox on the right, but in a pinch, she can do either side. I think we've seen Lily Reel, 2025 NWSL Rookie of the Year. I think she, in limited caps, has looked really promising. You're seeing them work in players like Izzy Rodriguez from Kansas City. They've been working in, Avery Patterson prefers to play on the right, but again, they're kind of looking at that versatility. They're looking at different attacking and defending options. The biggest question for them, and this is again just such a compliment to Dunn, is so many of those players can recreate a lot of the attacking styles that they liked with Dunn on the left side. They're still figuring out who can defend like Dunn, which again is a wonderful thing to say about a player that mostly played attacking midfield in her club career.
Melanie, we talk about positions. She'll leave the team as we're trying to replace her at at left back, but what was your favorite position for Crystal Dunn?
The thing about Crystal is that she's like the type of player you don't want to play against. So I think that's
Mhm.
something that I'll remember about her. Especially like thinking back to Gotham and thinking back to her arrival to the team. Like this, I remember being in the Rainbow Room for this giant media day, you know, when bringing in so many national team players and Crystal Dunn being one of them and kind of what that meant for her. But I just think that looking ahead to whether who will replace her, I know one of the things that I was thinking of as Claire was talking was kind of just the potential of this generation and the things we haven't seen from them yet. And kind of I'm excited to see who maybe steps up into this role or maybe who grew up watching Crystal Dunn play. One of the players that stood out to me from this last window, we didn't see too much of her. I know we spoke to her on full time, was Ayo Okay. And I just think her versatility as a player, you know, playing defensively, but also pushing up so much. I'm just excited to see what this next generation and maybe the influence from Crystal Dunn and not only just positionally, but just her ability, her work ethic, her ability to kind of just be versatile. And I'm very excited to see like who fills that role in the future.
This is not how I planned my day today. Well, I thank all three of you for coming on here to talk about Dunn and her career. And I thank you, Crystal Dunn, for all of the good U.S. Women's National Team memories from New Yorker to New Yorker that you sent my way. So I know I speak for many of us when I say thank you. So that's what I have to say. Here's what U.S. Soccer had to say. Quote, as one of the first Black stars of the U.S. Women's National Team, especially as a field player, Dunn has long been a role model to many young players of color across the country who aspire to reach the highest levels of the game. Dunn's career will be remembered for her versatility, her tremendous one-on-one defending, her ability to perform far above her size of, in parentheses, 5'1", her popularity among her teammates, her ability to inspire generations of U.S. Women's National Team players, and for a heck of a lot of winning. All right, well, I need to get the inside, what do we call it, like sights and sounds of Media Day. I'm not only jealous that you are in sunny Southern California, but I am jealous that you are at day 2 of 2 for NWSL Media Day. Claire, what have been the biggest takeaways?
Yeah, it's been a really good energy. I think we know that this was something of a tumultuous offseason for the NWSL and sort of a lot of the rule changing and back and forth of that sort of rhetoric with the union and stuff like that. And I think everyone's very eager to kind of talk soccer and get into the business of getting the 2026 season going. And I know Melanie experienced this as well, but I think we all felt, and maybe people have seen on social media, Triple Espresso were in the room together for the first time. And I think Trinity Rodman said she hadn't seen Mal since she was pregnant. So at least
Since the Olympics,
yeah, I think since the
believe.
Olympics, yeah. And so it was really, really powerful. And I think not only a lovely personal moment for those players, but also I think a powerful moment for the NWSL at large to be like, man, some heavy hitters are coming back this season and it's going to be really fun to see.
I will say it was very nice to see the three of them together in a room. There was a moment, like Claire referenced on social media, it's probably all blown up, but seeing Trinity, like she walks in, she sits down, and then she's like looking around. She's like, oh, who's here? And she realized Mal Pugh was sitting in a table down the room, and she kind of sprints over to her for the first time. I remember afterwards, she like gave her the big hug, and she's like, you're welcome to everyone, because it kind of gave us like the perfect image for all the media in the room. It was very enlightening to hear from them, speaking openly about their return to play, what this journey has been for both of them. Obviously, 2 very different journeys, 2 very different timelines. But just, I think that speaks to kind of where we are in the NWSL and kind of, I'm sure, one of the conversations that are going to be heading into this new year. And I'm very excited to hear more on that.
And something we have more to hear on. Sophia Wilson, of course, talking about the impact of Dunn. You alluded to it a little bit, but take a listen.
Crystal is so special to me. She is, in a lot of ways, like a big sister to me. I feel like she kind of took me under her wing early on and was someone that I connected with really well. I saw Crystal go through a lot of things. I saw her have a baby, go through that. I feel like I've known Marcel for his whole life, so she is one of the main reasons I knew that I could do the same thing. I could have a baby and come back and play because I saw Crystal do it. And she's just such an inspiration. I mean, I can't say enough things about what she's done for the game, what she's done for this league. And we're going to miss her for sure. I don't think there'll be another Crystal, but I'm so excited for this next chapter of her life. And she gave everything she had to the sport, and I'm excited for her.
Now let's talk about the U.S. women's national team in the present day. For Emma Hayes, this marks the end of the, quote, experimental window. In her 21 months in charge, Hayes has given 32 players their debuts. The experiment is over. She is now looking to the World Cup in 2027. Claire, how should she be feeling about her, quote, experiment?
Really good. I mean, I think the way we're going to look over the last 2 years on what it's done for the U.S. Women's National Team player pool for years to come is this is like the job on top of the job. The job is to win major tournaments, and the job on top of the job is exactly what Hayes has done over the last, I guess, like year and a half. They have players who have U.S. Women's National Team experience. They all look ready for the moment. I get the sense that the environment in camp is both allowing players to be themselves while also not lowering the standard. And I don't know how many of these names that we saw in this January camp are going to be on that World Cup qualifying roster in November. But the whole idea is that if your number's called, you're ready to go. And even just like, God, look at the goalkeepers. How long has it been since the U.S. has had 2 goalkeepers between like Claudia Dickey and Fallon Tillis-Joyce who have the experience that they have going into qualifying, or all of these defenders and all of these midfielders? And the core group might end up looking not too dissimilar from 2024. But I also think that what this means for the program at large is pretty incredible. And it's cool to see Hayes really deliver on what her vision was from the moment she like walked through U.S. soccer's doors.
To your point, Claire, I saw a quote from Hayes after this duo of friendlies where she said something along the lines of that it's her job to bring these players in and, quote, make them feel hungry when they return to their NWSL clubs. And you love to see that type of ownership for the game, for the league, from the national team manager. All right, Melanie, experiment's over. I'm going to stop asking you about every single individual game. How are you feeling about the last 21 months as a whole from Hayes?
I mean, everything Claire said is spot on. And one of the things I was thinking of as she was talking was this idea of what Emma was able to do with this team is also not just look to 2027, but look to 2028, 2031, like create this pool of players who are hungry and not just thinking short term for what this World Cup in Brazil is going to mean, really creating this momentum to kind of fuel these players to develop at their own pace and in a pace that's going to be fundamentally powerful for this national team. I think yesterday while we were having tacos, as Tamerra alluded to, I was saying to her how the madness of someone like Emma Hayes looking at the legacy of the U.S. Women's National Team and thinking, I'm going to fix it. Like, I feel like some player or some coaches might not take that on, might not be creative enough to think about ways to improve this. But I do think as we look ahead, I'm very excited for some of these young players. Whether or not they make it to 27, I'm very excited to see what this experimental phase is. And we saw the stepping up of new leaders like Trinity Rahman stepping up and maturing and like bringing her level to the next game. Also, bringing it back to media day a little bit, I did get to talk with Riley Jackson for a little bit, and I asked her about her assist to Trinity that led to the Sexy Dexy and Emma Hayes and that entire scenario. But just seeing in her kind of, what it meant to her that moment to be at that stage, especially for someone so young, and seeing how I'm very excited to see all these players that kind of just had this camp, which is kind of a start to their preseason, and now how they bring that into the NWSL season. Like you said, something that Emma Hayes talked about. And yeah, what a great way to kind of transition into talking about the new NWSL year.
On a week where she inks a $2 million a year contract, Rodman also wears the captain's armband for the first time with the national team. And I'll be honest, too, I know when we spoke from game 1 to 2 of this January window and Rodman tried to get Emma Hayes to do the Sexy Dexy, I said to you, Melanie, I said, I think it's in her. I think it's a matter of time. And I didn't think it would come this quick. I thought it was going to be like a more consequential game that she like dangled it over her head, like maybe saving it for the World Cup or something. But now it's like, I think to myself, if Hayes is putting herself out there, like I need to know it. Like we all need to know it when we're called upon. To jump in there and do it. And it's kind of one of my worst fears as well. All right, before we say goodbye, I want to get Who was your surprise standout young player?
There are so many. It was like, I think everyone did so well. I think, gosh, it's like grading on a curve because I think I'm going to cheat
It's a good
and
way
pick
to
a
put
couple.
it.
I'm going
That's
to
a
cheat and pick
really
a
good way
couple.
to put it.
But it is like grading on a curve where like watching 20-year-old Claire Hutton be like a leader on this team, because she, again, is another player that just has so much experience at such a young age. I think she continuously impresses me with like how calm she is and how she makes other players better. But then again, kind of grading on the same curve, you already mentioned this, Melanie, watching Ayo Oke walk into camp late and get this late call up and start the second game and get that beautiful assist. I'm like, that's cool. That's like what dreams are made of. So I think looking at maybe a more experienced player, I'm going to say Claire Hutton, continuously just really, really impressed with her. But I just thought what Ayo Oke did this week was like so baller. So I'm going to call her out as well.
Shout out to the full-time boost, our guest from last week, Georgia's own. Okay. Melanie, who you got?
I'm going to follow the theme of shouting out two players. So I do think, one, I keep thinking about the Jamise Joseph goal. The way she was just able to so powerfully and beautifully like spin and roll and then score that goal. It's funny because I remember the chatter was like, we knew this was coming. Like anyone who's been watching her at that NWSL level knew she had this in her. But being able to see that on the national team stage just really, it excites me for what's to come. And then I also keep thinking about Rylan Turner and, her ability to kind of opening that goal for this 2-match window, I think really did a lot of momentum to kind of get this team kind of, I guess, give them the confidence they needed to kind of continue doing what they did over the next 2 matches. And also just knowing that these are players, these are humans with histories that we aren't necessarily privy to because they are so young. So knowing that she has so much chemistry and such a history with Trinity Rodman, and just knowing that that is something that we're going to continue seeing building on the national team level, whether that's soon in the future. I'm just really excited for these players to kind of, and what they're going to bring to the U.S. Women's National Team.
Me too. God, we say Sam Coffey at times, like, she's wise beyond her years. Anything about 20-year-old Claire Hutton, forget it. I'm so excited. Melanie, thanks for all of your all-encompassing reporting. Your article, Emma Hayes' experimental window is over, in addition to Emma Hayes on the fatal Minnesota shooting. And now we'll send it over to not only our resident Brit, but our magnificent producer, that's right, producer Theo, who was in London to get into the FIFA Women's Champions Cup semifinals. That happened on Wednesday at Brentford's Community Stadium.
And now I'm delighted to be joined all the way from Queens, New York. It's Jenna Tonelli. Jenna, how are we doing?
Doing great. On this cold, snowy, well, it's not snowing right now, but we got hit with that storm a few days ago, so it is freezing, and the sidewalks are impassable still.
London and New York, I feel like there's a little bit more camaraderie.
Yes.
And so maybe in a weird way, feeling a little bit closer to you. And do you know why I felt even closer to you? Is because yesterday in London off the River Thames at Brentford Stadium, New York, New Jersey, Gotham FC were in town. And who else better to get into all things Gotham than get Jenna Tonelli on the pod? So Jenna, FIFA Women's Champions Cup semi-final. There we were, surrounded by about 500 Brazilians, making all the noise in West London. And they were rewarded. Gotham 0, Corinthians 1 in the first ever semi-final of the Women's Champions Cup. Gotham eliminated. Corinthians move on to Sunday's final against Arsenal. Jenna, you were watching this game from Gotham, from New York. And
from my
what
bed
were your
at 7 a.m.
Oh, yes, of course. I completely forgot. So take me through your experience of the game and maybe what you thought of the result from a Gotham angle.
It looked like a preseason game. Quite frankly, it looked like a preseason game. And I don't say that as an excuse for the result. I just say that based on what I saw from Gotham. And quite frankly, Corinthians too. I mean, they I know they won. They didn't really do all that much.
Yeah, I spoke to Lily Real before the tournament started about that. She sort of said, politely, the calendar and where this tournament falls and preparation is sort of out of my hands as a player, was the way she phrased it. You say Gotham can't use this as an excuse. We heard from Jess Carter and Ann-Katrin Berger and Juan Carlos Amoros after the game. They all sort of mentioned the preseason wasn't great. I think maybe Ann-Katrin Berger had the strongest comments of anyone, but they also said, we didn't lose the game because we're not fit. Right. And to be fair, the same applies to Corinthians. They're also in preseason. In fact, Corinthians' season ended 2 weeks after Gotham, so they actually had less time off than Gotham. That should be noted. And 40-year-old Gabby Zanotti, who scored that winning goal off the error, she showed that energy is timeless. Football is timeless. Anyone can do anything, no matter how long preseason, no matter how old you are. So in many ways, I'm sort of like, well, it was an even playing field, even if it was not a beautiful football match.
Right. Exactly.
Do you feel like, Carter, Amoros, AKB could have been more spiky with their words about how they felt about playing that game or FIFA, or do you think they weren't trying to use that as an excuse?
Yeah, I think I truly do think it's both because, I know these players, I know this team. It's truly not, they're not looking for the excuse. But, like I said, like both teams didn't look good. It wasn't like a fun, like pretty match to watch. And I don't think, so again, like I don't think that's why Gotham lost per se, but I do think it contributed to what we saw on the pitch from both of those teams, which, kind of stinks. And I think, if I would actually be really interested to see these two teams play when they're in the peak of their season, what does that look like? How does that look different? Does, Corinthians actually get into Gotham's final third in the second half? I think we only saw it like a couple of times, and one of those times was when they scored that goal. So, yeah. And, Gotham is just kind of like, yes, they're controlling the midfield. Yes, you're getting into the final third, but they didn't really have that final pass. They couldn't really score, which is a consistent, which is like a classic Gotham problem. And it just kind of looked even messier, in that game.
Well, that's why I know we're going to talk a lot about the preseason and how fit these teams were, but there was a point, and obviously it's easy for Corinthians to say this after the game, but Gabby Zanotti, when we spoke to her in Brentford after the game, she sort of said, yeah, we knew Gotham were going to have more of the ball. We knew they were good in their middle third and their own third, and they wanted to build up, and Jalen Howe was going to come deep to collect the ball. They said this in the press conference. They were like, we knew how Gotham were going to play, and we knew if we kept tight in our own third and they said, we're going to go for a low block, we're going to absorb pressure. We know we don't have the chops because it's preseason to press high. They said that was the way of limiting Gotham's most dangerous ability and most dangerous players. And that reminded me of games like, the Chicago Stars game last year, which I think was maybe finished 2-2, or was it 0-0? You might remember.
Once the season ends,
season's over.
Black out.
But there was definitely a game against Chicago Stars last year where I felt like that was exactly what Chicago did. Yes. And they got a kind of... And maybe a draw would have been more of a fair result. Obviously, it would have gone to extra time and penalties. But the point is, I think Corinthians knew exactly how to play Gotham. Gotham have 21 shots on the day, 66% possession. They only forced 2 saves from Corinthians goalkeeper Leticia. So, in my mind, I think Corinthians' game plan was totally right. And they took the biggest chance they got, and what a goal it was.
Exactly. Totally agree. And it's funny because I was watching the game with my wife, and I turned to Adriana and I said, this reminds me of when Gotham played Chicago. So it's really funny that you say that. And this is a good team. I mean, they win everything in Brazil, in South America. So they're skilled and they're talented, and they were able to skillfully go on the counter, catch Gotham, a little bit flat-footed in defense, and score that goal. And I don't want, I just want to be very clear, I don't want to take anything away from them. That was an amazing goal, and they did exactly what they intended to do, just as you said. And that's how you get Gotham, because Gotham, they really struggle in a low block. They really struggle, when they can't catch a team out of position, and Corinthians took advantage.
Well, I want to jump on something there as well, because how much of Gotham's story last year was written on this idea of underdogs my arse, right? But to some extent, people underestimated Gotham last year. And coming into this tournament, no one underestimated them. Like you said, they were the favourites. We were all expecting Gotham to meet Arsenal on Sunday. And it's so funny how Gotham sort of 2025 was defined by people underestimating then. And then here we are, once you're at the top of the mountain, there's a target on your back. It becomes it's a very different game, isn't it, Jenna?
Oh, yes. And I think you hit the nail on the head there. Corinthians, those players, that coaching staff, they knew that they were being counted out. And I'm sure that provided them that extra motivation to really lock in and do what they needed to do.
Yeah, Gotham started 8 of the 11 players that started in San Jose in the 2025 NWSL Championship Final. They beat the Washington Spirit 1-0. So in many ways, Juan was trying to trust the players who had got him that trophy to try and do it again in London at the Women's Champions Cup. Didn't work out. I take your point about trying to make this tournament a really exciting part of the women's soccer sphere, I think is as you put it. Gabby Zanotti, who again is 40, played alongside Marta at Brazil. I don't know how these Brazilians do it. They just play forever.
I need their secret.
Yes, Gabby Zanotti, if you want to give your secret to
give me
to
a
living
call.
your best life, let us know, fulltime@theathletic.com. Her post-match was really beautiful. She said this moment was a dream come true. It's the most important goal of my career and in Corinthians history. We did not leave any open spaces. We helped each other all the time. We're dedicated. We were Corinthians. That was her quote. And I think to be 40, to have played all over the world, she's played in the States, it's taken her a long time to she's seen the women's game come so far. And here she is playing at, the biggest team in South America right now. I thought that was... I think, we'll maybe know more on Sunday about how we feel about this tournament and where it is in the sphere, as you said. But I think her reaction, the 500 Corinthians fans that absolutely lit up West London on Wednesday, and her calling it the biggest goal of her career, I think that did give the FIFA Women's Champions Cup like a moment that it had been craving. There is amazing investment in South American football, in particular a club like Corinthians that was one of the first to professionalize, gets big attendances. They have 2 million followers on Instagram. They had
awesome.
500 people out on a Wednesday afternoon making absolute massive amount of noise, song after song, flag after flag. They were there drinking at 11 in the morning till 11 at night. I mean, this was one of the most passionate fan bases I've ever seen in my history of watching football my entire life. And if they go and do it on Sunday, I mean, that is going to really start an interesting conversation about where the power in continental women's football lies if South America really does pull this off. I think that's the next question I really want to ask you, Jenna. From almost like an NWSL North American perspective, what does Gotham losing mean? Jess Berman was at the semi-final yesterday. This game, this tournament was in a way meant to be NWSL sort of announcing itself even more on the international stage. They lose 1-0, even in a dominant display. I think we'll all agree Gotham had more of the ball and more of the chances. Even in a dominant display, it sort of feels like a bit of egg on the face for the NWSL, who talk a really big game in terms of wanting to be the biggest league in the world. And like you said, Gotham wanting to be one of the biggest clubs in the world. So where does this result leave the NWSL and their own narrative for world domination?
Yeah, and I want to be careful here because I think I rarely ever am. But I think these games aren't played before they're played
before
or however.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. And this is why you play the game. And this is what we love about the NWSL, that any team could be any team. So, I think it's a kind of almost like a dangerous mindset to go into a tournament like this, thinking, Gotham is going to win and like they're going to prove that the NWSL is the best league in the world. And honestly, even before the tournament was starting, I was assuming wrongly, so I'll admit that Gotham Arsenal would meet in the final and we'd get that NWSL discourse. It sucks from like a I don't want to say like a marketing standpoint, but that's kind of what it is. Like you can't say Gotham FC and the NWSL are intercontinental champions. Like, come see our team, come see our league. Like, you can't say that now. But I don't think it's like this defining moment of what the NWSL product is or how good or bad Gotham is. It's one game.
It's one game. It's
one game that they didn't play well, and that happens in the NWSL all the time. So I think it stinks. Like, I'm sure, I know the team is obviously disappointed, and I'm sure the league is disappointed too. But it's one game. What are you gonna do? They'll have other opportunities. So I don't think it's like red alert. That Gotham lost a game in preseason to a team that, quite frankly, I think was underestimated.
The bad news is Gabby Portillo comes off at halftime. Juan said it after the game that was a precaution with potentially an injury.
Yes.
Or at least, they were protecting her from getting injured. Rose Lavelle comes off with a head injury, which didn't look great in the second half. She was down for a few minutes. Is this maybe what Gotham fans are going to remember this game for? And how, I guess we don't think these injuries are serious right now, but it's another reminder of sort of, it could happen in any game, right? It's not just that it's 3 weeks into preseason, but it's not great.
hopefully, Gabby Portillo has had injuries. She was injured last season a bunch for Gotham. That concussion for Rose did not look good. She's currently in concussion protocol, and I'm pretty sure she will not be playing in that third place match. And quite frankly, like, I wouldn't put her in. Like, what's the point? That, you want to protect your player for the season at that point. So, I don't, hopefully she'll be okay. Although those concussions always scare me, but, even with that, the team did come out relatively unscathed, hopefully, that we know of. But for me, watching the game, kind of just thinking about it from a non-result standpoint, and I wrote about that in my Substack a little bit, that was a big concern about taking this seriously and playing it at this point in the calendar. And I wrote an article about this on Sports Illustrated a bit about how Gotham was trying to prepare to make sure that they didn't run into this problem. That's a big concern for where this tournament is placed.
And I should say, I sat down with Lily Real before the tournament to ask some of these questions about workload and calendar and such. And she said she was very confident in the Gotham staff, and the physios and athletic trainers were preparing the players incredibly well. She felt good. She felt like their load had been adjusted for trying to play this kind of game in this part of the preseason, and that everything is being taken care of. So we should definitely say that. Also want to give Gotham staff some extra credit, because to see them sending so many people from their, front office, back office to London to cover this tournament, make it as big as possible for the players. They're actually training at Queen's Park Rangers.
Yeah.
My
West
London football club. They're at arguably the greatest football club in the world, training every day on our pitches. So big kudos for that. And they had their own numbers on the back of the shirt. Obviously, when you play in the NWSL or the WSL or any league, the league often provides the font, and Gotham did their own numbers with a little Gotham sticker. It was the first time they played with the 2 stars for the new championship as well on Wednesday. So the details, the intention, I think Gotham took this tournament really seriously, like you said, and I think I want to give them credit for that. I know the result and the performance wasn't what they wanted, but I don't think you can knock them for trying. Jenna, before I let you go, do just want to look ahead to Sunday. There is another game. There's, they are playing for a bronze medal. The prize money will be $200,000 for both them and ASFA, the Moroccan African champions that lost 6-0 to Arsenal on Wednesday night, also in Brentford Stadium. The sheer power and money and physicality and speed of Arsenal was too much for them to handle. It's a very clinical performance from Arsenal. Alessia Russo coming off the bench and scoring 2 goals in 15 minutes. We'll kind of tell you everything about that game, as well as Olivia Smith scoring a great goal in the first half. But I digress. Gotham will have to play ASFA on Sunday. What would third place mean, Jenna? And I guess if they lost that game, what would that mean?
Yeah. Well, gosh, I really hope they don't lose that game, because I think just mentally that would be a little hard pill to swallow. However, and again, I'm just saying this, my own brain here. I have nothing to base this on. I'm imagining that we're not going to see that same starting 11 play this game. I think we're going to see a lot of rotation here. I think, they're going to try to get those. They signed a slew of new rookies. I think we're going to see those, whether or not they start, that's a different conversation. But I absolutely think we're going to see them in the lineup. Jordan Dudley, who they just signed, I think we're going to get to see some of what they can do. And my gut, again, based on nothing but my gut, is telling me that they're going to really use this opportunity to see some rotation, get some new players in there, try these rookies out, and just see how they measure up, against a team from a different continent. I think it's going to, hopefully it'll be an interesting match. I hope they win. I think that would just be good for morale at this point. But I think we're going to just see a very different looking Gotham.
Arsenal fans will be on our backs, Jenna, if we don't talk a little bit about this final on Sunday, Arsenal Corinthians. Any feelings on this one? Europe versus South America to crown world champions. What do you think about this final? Are you picking anyone to win, or what's the most interesting part about Sunday?
It's big final. Corinthians has thrown this whole thing on its head. Honestly, I don't really know what to expect. I think Arsenal are probably, again, but you can't play the game before you play the game. On paper, yeah, they should probably win. But Corinthians has shown like they're willing to do what they need to do to find the weaknesses of the teams that they're playing. They're prepared. They're watching the film. Like they know what to expect. And I also want to say, people counted out the Brazilian national team, in international competition the past few years, and they've been playing really, really well. So I think I wouldn't be surprised if we're surprised. I think it's actually going to be a tighter game than we might be initially thinking.
I was hanging out with a lot of Brazilians yesterday, and they were all telling me, if you think this Wednesday afternoon with Corinthians Gothams is anything, just you wait till Sunday. They are telling me there's going to be thousands with connections to Brazil and Sao Paulo in North London at that game on Sunday evening, 6:00. We will be watching. Jenna, thanks so much for being here and giving me an American Gotham angle for this wonderful FIFA Women's Champions Cup extravaganza that we are having in London at the moment. We love when international women's football comes together. And I think at the very least, we've had that. Certainly lots of criticisms, lots of excitement. But at the very least, we've had the world of football come together. And whether you're Moroccan, Brazilian, English or American, it is a grand old time to be had when you go to the football.
Who will be crowned world champion? Well, you could find out. Catch that game at the inaugural FIFA Women's Champions Cup final between Arsenal and Corinthians on Sunday, 6 p.m. in the UK on Sky Sports. That's 1 p.m. Eastern Time here in the US on the CBS Golazo Network. That game will be preceded by the third place playoff game between Gotham FC and ASFAR at 2:45 p.m. in the UK. That is 9:45 in the morning Eastern Time, also on Sky Sports and Golazo. Thanks so much for hanging out with us here on Full Time. If you've got Crystal Dunn feelings, memories, we want to hear them. Send us a DM or an email. Our email is fulltime@theathletic.com or DM over on Instagram or TikTok. And before we get out of here, normally you are listening to us at Full Time, but now I want to hear from you. We're asking you to fill out a quick survey about your listening habits at theathletic.com/survey26. 3 lucky entries will compensate you for your time, $100 worth of Amazon vouchers. So whether you're a longtime listener or a new one, we want to hear from you. Go to theathletic.com/survey26. The link is also in our show notes. Did you know The Athletic has partnered with Yahoo Sports to provide free best-in-class coverage of women's sports? That's right. Go check out the Women's Sports Hub at sports.yahoo.com/women-sports. That does it for our show today. My name is Jillian Sakovits. There is absolutely no way Full Time would ever happen without producer Theo, our video producer Leah Griffin, and our executive producer Emily Olsen. We'll see you next week.